I would like to just welcome all our guests. I see we've got people joining as we're going along. This is the first of our Meet the Artists online webinars hosted by Africa Collect. And we're going to feature two incredible artists, what we would call emerging artists, Mohini Pillay and Lisa Younger, who is going to join us a little bit later. The other person on this call is Thabo. Thabo and I work together at Africa Collect. So before we dive into the incredible talents of these artists, I'd like to just quickly introduce you to Africa Collect. This is a new and innovative platform which is dedicated to supporting and developing the careers of visual arts enterprises and artists by providing robust support to collectors in their journey. In its most simplest form, we are helping buyers afford to buy artwork. We realize that there are a lot of South Africans who would like to participate more in the realm of collecting. And so we have launched a fund to allow people to do that. And both Mohini and Lisa, who you are going to meet and learn about tonight, are part of our partnership, which is ever growing. We're ever accepting new galleries and artists onto our platform. We do have a website, so we will pop that up into the chat box. We've also created a catalog of work for this evening's artists, which you're more than welcome to go and have a look at. It's also in the chat box. So this is just a small example of the kinds of things that we want to do. And we're very much interested in trying to connect people to artists and in a very deep, meaningful, authentic kind of a way. So one of the activities we are undertaking is this panel discussion, and there will be many more of them that really aim to bridge the gap between artists and collectors, hopefully fostering a vibrant and thriving art market, which would be good for all of us. So off the back of that, again, thank you to everyone who's joined us. I see there are a couple new people, and I'm sure as we're going along, more people will join us. The reason we kind of selected these two artists is because I know both of them and their work, and I'm endlessly impressed by where they are taking their careers. But they have also just been selected as Sasol New Signatures finalists, which for those people who don't know, it's quite a big art competition in South Africa, the coveted prize. The way the competition works is that artists will submit work, and then there's a selection of finalists and then ultimately a winner. So this kind of thing is a big deal for artists. It has the ability to really kind of launch their careers into new spaces and change where they are going in their trajectory, because obviously more people get to hear about them. But the big thing for collectors to kind of realize, I think, is that an award like this kind of gives you, some artists have been pre-selected by people in the arts industry as being very good. So a lot of the questions we get is, how do we buy work? How do we know what's good and what's bad? And I would believe there's an instinctual process to this personally. But if you're very nervous, then a good starting point is to go for people like Mohini or Lisa, who are finalists in a competition like this, because they have been pre-vetted for you by the industry. Mohini, can I please ask you to give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and to your work?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Sarah. My name is Mohini Pillay. I am a visual artist. I was born in Durban, South Africa, and I currently reside in Johannesburg. I'm 32 years old, and I work as an artist studio assistant at the moment. I've been practicing for the last 3 years. I completed my BA Fine Art at Wits University in June 2020, smack bang in the middle of the pandemic. So that was very, very interesting. Yeah, I'm just very excited to be here.
We're very happy to have you. I'm sure working through the pandemic, it feels like the pandemic was 40 million years ago, but I mean, it was so life-changing at the time. And it wasn't all that long ago. Do you want to walk us through your work and your process? I know you have a presentation that you're going to share with us.
Sure.
And then I'm pepper you with questions.
Mohini Pillay Art is my practice. There's a QR code that if you scan it, it will take you directly to my Instagram page. So if you don't follow me, please do. Post what I'm up to there. In 2021, I left work as a tutor and decided to go back to art full time and be a practicing artist, which was always the dream growing up. And so my practice is, I like to think of as a root system. So a rhizome is the botanical word for it. And it's this ever expanding, continuously growing system or network of branches of different things. So I don't see my practice as one linear thing that unfolds step by step. There are multiple things happening, different mediums, different themes and conversations, and different parts of my identity that are being represented there all at the same time. So they all sort of tie into each other at one point or another. This is just a little diagrammatic sketch I have with just things that I relate to. So the woman in my family, flowers, healing, dealing with mental health concerns, like feminist discourse is also something that I engage in frequently, and something that I really sort of believe in and advocate for. When I started my practice, when I was called back to making art full time, the first thing I did was create this series of circular canvases. So my dad has a background in carpentry, and I learned woodworking skills from him. And so I wasn't sure what my subject matter would be, or like on the canvases. I just knew I wanted to oil paint, and I am really fascinated by watching people make things and do things with their hands and doing things with my own hands. So I decided to make my own canvas stretches in like custom forms. So this is a little bit of what I was doing then. I got to play around with some cool machinery, CNC routers, and some nifty gadgets. So that was really fun. And then the next step was finding subject matter, choosing subject matter that I wanted to paint and that I felt represented me. And the first artwork that I made was an oil painting called An Act of Kindness. So, during the pandemic, I took a little bit of a step away from art. It was a difficult space to navigate, and I was tutoring and working in Europe and traveling a lot, which was quite isolating and lonely. And I remember one morning I was on a flight, and we had just taken off, and we were flying over a mountain range, and the sky was this beautiful pink color, and all these snow-covered mountains were pink as well. You'll see the actual image in the bottom right of the screen here. And I couldn't see because I was in the middle center aisle seat. And a complete stranger very, very kindly reached out and grabbed my phone and took some pictures so I could see. And at that time, it was like such a simple act, but for me, it touched me profoundly. As someone who is a visual person and appreciates beautiful things, and so I really, really connected in that moment and felt very deeply. And that's usually where the inception of my artworks is a moment where I connect and feel deeply. So this artwork became this sort of abstracted mountain range, which now that I am looking back on it, every time I look at it, I see something different, but I'm seeing that the sort of the rhizome, that root system that I'm talking about, that represents my work. So yeah, that I think is very important. I think kindness is an important value of mine as well. And so I think this is probably a key piece in my portfolio that I think represents myself and my practice very, very well. It's an oil painting, as I said. As an oil painter, I don't know, play around with things. I paint in very, very thin layers, so there are many, many layers in this artwork. It took me about a year to complete. It's also has German glass glitter accents, and that I enjoy playing around with unusual materials. And so this was a material that I was working with while I was at university, as a representation of diamonds. So I worked for a while in retail and diamond and fine jewelry industry, and was my work in university was centered around a critique of South Africa's history and the diamond industry and the role it plays in shaping our society. So that was a reference to where my practices come from in terms of being a student and baby artist, and growing now to something that represents me. And yeah, so that's an act of kindness, which is, yeah, I think one of my favorites. And then, so my medium that I work in is polymer clay, another one of the materials that I enjoy. So I stumbled upon this by accident. I was looking to get into sculpting, and at the time we were experiencing like very intense load shedding. So all of the ceramicists that I was going to see about, making work and learning were like, listen, this is not a great time because we can't fire any kilns or like make stuff. So I started playing around with different kinds of clay, and I stumbled upon polymer clay, which has these beautiful vibrant colors, and also has a strong resemblance in like texture and yeah, to sugar paste. Yeah, so my mom was a cake decorator, and she used to sculpt sugar flowers when I was growing up. And so I always would get involved with her, and it's a skill that I learned from her. And so I've been applying the techniques that I learned from her to my sculptures, and using polymer clay instead of sugar paste because of longevity and preservation, etc. Yeah, I also use brass accents in my work, which is a reference to my culture and my heritage. In Hindu culture, brass is a very significant material. A lot of yeah, the objects we use in prayer and worship and to decorate our homes are brass. I also enjoy the way it reflects light. I'm a bit of a magpie. I love a shiny thing. Okay, so this is a work that I made last year while I was actually working with Sarah as part of the business of being an artist workshop and exhibition. It's called A Rose is a Rose is a Rose, making reference to a Gertrude Stein quote. And for me, it's about accepting things for what they are. So flowers are a big symbol in my work. I use them a lot. There's something that I really love, and that it's been sort of passed down to me from my family. So my mom, my granny, and my aunt, my whole family really enjoy flowers, and it's an important part of our relationship, and it's a way we express love and communicate with each other. I think yeah, they symbolize joy and so much in society. We use them in celebration and in mourning and prayer and ritual. Yeah, and they are such like high vibrational sort of entities in the world. So yeah, I really enjoy flowers, and I sort of so there's a language called floriography, and it's an old Victorian language where flowers sort of carry meanings and represent different things. So some can represent love or sorrow, and I think in society, I mean, everybody attaches sort of like love and this idea of romance to the red rose. But I realized that each of us we all form our own connections and our own meanings and symbolism from different flowers. And so for me, the red rose represents my childhood and my home and my relationship with my mother. And so that's really what this artwork is about. And it is, I think, maybe just over 100 red polymer clay petals. I sculpt each of them by hand. So it's a slow and intricate process, sometimes a little bit finicky and frustrating, but most of all, it's cathartic. And I think for me, that's quite important, using a technique that my mom has given me, a skill that I've learned from her, to sort of heal myself through this meditative process. Um, uh, this artwork, Belfield Dahlia, is based on a dahlia plant that my mom used to grow in our garden as well, and is sort of like a representation of joy and the memories I have of being really happy at home, and yeah, stuff like that. My train of thought went a little wonky there. Another part of this.
Mohini, I just want to step in there, if you wouldn't mind going back to the dahlia plant.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. So it's one of the questions I get a lot as a curator is, where does the artist find their inspiration? Or somebody will come to me and say something completely different, that a work makes them feel something completely different from what the artist intended. And I think it's an interesting thing that for most artists, they're grappling with something, they're remembering something, they have a feeling about something, and that's what they put into their work. And sometimes that is very obvious to the viewer, and in other times it's not, because it's more of a feeling that the viewer gets from the work. So, I mean, for you, when you look at this, it means something quite specific relative to your mother, and, the cathartic kind of nature of the work, and good and happy times. And for other people, they might think of it as something completely different. And I always think that that's quite an interesting thing to note about works. There is no kind of right or wrong answer for what the artwork means. It's whatever you take away from it. Obviously, it's created with an intention, but that doesn't take away from what you think the artwork is about or how it makes you feel.
True, Sarah. Like, in fact, it actually adds to the meaning for me. I think one of my favorite things is seeing how people engage with the work and their responses to it, and the meaning that they derive from it, and the connection that they have with the works. And I think that for me always reinforces what I'm doing, or it adds a different dimension, and it makes me think differently, and that in turn will inform my practice and the next sculpture that I make. Or so I think that's a very pretty profound point, and very important as well. Thank you.
Sorry to stop you, go ahead.
No problem. Let's go. Okay, circular forms, and then so another part of my practice, which I think is very sort of key representation of my identity and who I am as a person, is my vilika sculptures. So a vilika is a clay lamp. In English, some people refer to them. So it's vilika in Tamil. I'm of Tamil South Indian descent, and some people will call them diyas, different names for them. So a clay lamp is the oldest form of lighting known to man. It is a simple well with some sort of oil or fat in it and a wick. And these have been used to illuminate homes in Hindu culture, and in my home, I use it to bring good energy into the home, to illuminate the space, to set my intentions for the day and ground myself. We use them in prayer and in celebration. Diwali is probably the most common time that you will see a vilika or diyas being used to decorate homes. And for me, it is this sort of everyday functional object in the home, and the form hasn't really changed much over the centuries. And I was looking at it, and it is so clearly representative of feminine energy and the yoni form. And I wanted a way to sort of honor that divine feminine energy, and emphasize it. And so I took flowers, which we also as Hindus use in rituals and offer and use alongside the vilikas. And so I started to incorporate these two symbols together. And and yeah, just looking at the power, the creative power of feminine energy. And so I started to make these Villica sculptures, and using this technique that, well, the sculpting technique that I learned from my mother, and new techniques that I'm like experimenting with all the time, blending the clay and folding it to make patterns in the petals, etc. So these were some of the first two Villicas that I made. This one on the left here, the red one was the first actually, and again, just sort of making reference to Shakti energy, which is female energy in Hinduism, something I feel I resonate very strongly with. And the red color is very, very sort of important and embodies that Shakti energy. Yeah, very honestly. So, and I do love the red very much. Yeah, and so I started to make these flowers from, again, flowers that I connect with, and memories. So I made this one that sort of resembles the red one that on the left, that resembles a carnation, and then a dahlia, and then they like started to evolve and become different things. This rose is a tea rose. I think it's called a peace rose is the name for it. But it reminds me very much of my grandmother, and she's this very dignified, very loving and peaceful human being. So I think for me that was what that was about. And again, the meditative process of creating something, and also just being able to play with the colors. I think play is such an important part of my practice as well. I always say that polymer clay is like Play-Doh for big kids. So yeah, I started to mount the lamps on wood blocks, as a way of framing them, but also a way of like anchoring them and giving them stability. And that has also become very representative of my dad's role in my life, again referencing back the woodwork, and also speaking to patterns in nature, and the act of me creating something that replicates these patterns in nature, that I find really, really fascinating. Yeah.
Kenny, is the lamp functional?
So you can't light it. It's not functional, but I am playing with a more sensory element. So adding like a floral oil or a scent to it, so that you can engage with the works in a different way. So yeah, so right now they're purely symbolic, but I'm hoping to make them a more sensory experience going
I
forward.
was just curious. It's neither here nor there. I was just wondering whether you had created it in that way. Yeah.
I had intended to create lamps that were functional at the time, but I don't think the material allows for that. And so the brass insert at the lip of the lamp makes reference to the flame that would usually burn there, and still reflect reflects the light and brings that element into the work.
Awesome.
And then so these are some works that are in progress at the moment and that I have been playing around with. So I am sculpting a chrysanthemum at the moment, which is proving to be very, very tricky and intricate. So that's the yellow one, and that's on its way. It should be ready in the next month or so. And then the circular painting on the right is also a part of the circular canvas series, and uses patterns from nature. So the original pattern is from a sand dune that I took a picture of as well. Again, harking back to those intricate patterns in nature that sort of flow and morph and change and create these shapes. I'm playing with arranging the petals in more abstract forms, more textural just moving away from the standard sort of flower symbol and just playing, really. Yeah.
So, I know you're in the middle of the chrysanthemum, but sort of how long have you been working on it for?
So that one I have been working on since December of this year. So generally the sculptures take me quite a long time. The paintings take very, very long. The flower sculptures can take anywhere from 3 days to weeks. Yeah, it's a slow process, one petal at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of like for a lot of people to keep up working on one thing for such a long period of time is sort of unheard of in this day and age, because what we tend to do, the way most people work, at least I'll take myself as an example, quite a lot of my work is on the computer, and quite a lot of it is sort of one task, right, or a series of tasks, and they happen quite quickly. So the idea of somebody working on something for months on number and allowing oneself the freedom to change it, break it, realize it's not working, start again. I mean, you're saying it's a tricky piece, which I can only imagine means that during the process of creation, you've had trouble. So for a lot of us, when we see the first sign of trouble, we give up. But as an artist, you kind of have to embrace trouble and move on with the process of creation. Otherwise, you'd never get anywhere. You'd never complete anything. And I think that's always such a testament to the drive of creative spirit that is required if you decide that this is what you're going to do with your life.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it is. It does require a lot of commitment and dedication and patience. I think it's also just part of the human experience is trying and failing and breaking and remaking things. So yeah, I think that's just really a part of who I am and a part of the work as a result of that. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's a lesson we could all learn from.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohini. That's awesome. I have Lisa here with me. Lisa has arrived.
Awesome. Hi, Lisa.
So Lisa, I'm going to hand over to Lisa to do her presentation. And you may hear me quietly in the background throwing in some questions to Lisa.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this panel discussion, and thank you to Sarah for putting it together. And congrats to Mohini for making it into the top 100. Yes. So yeah, a little bit about my background. I grew up in Roodepoort. I did a drama, the Bachelor of Arts, Dramatic Art at Wits. Where I graduated in 1994. And I majored in theatre studies and scenography, scenography being the design of sets, props and costumes, and lighting, although I don't know anything about lighting, but there are quite a few great scenographers out there that also extend their repertoire to lighting. I'm 51 years old. As a practicing scenographer, I'm 29 years old, but as a practicing artist, I'm 4 years old, and I live in Johannesburg. So I work full-time from a little studio space where I work. I do my design practice in that studio space, and I do my art practice. But I've also been doing some short-term rental or a self-funded residency at August House. And I have really found it very beneficial for me to be in that space. I just find it takes me out of my comfort zone. It introduces me to a whole new set of brand new experiences and brand new energies. And I think as an artist, you can really get very much tied up in your head. And so this studio space at August House has been great to get me out of my head and into a new space. I've met a lot of people through August House. I've been part of some incredible programming. The Boba course was one of them, and Mohini is also a graduate of that course. And then life drawing classes, discussion panels, crit sessions, all of those things have really, really helped to, I've learned a lot just being in that space for 5 or 6 months of the year. So I think for me, starting my work, and it took me years and years to go, like, why? What's going on? Like, why are you not starting? And there's the great fear of starting because you don't know what do I want to make work about? What do I want to say? Will it be meaningful? Will people care? So this sense of like, where do I start? And as a theatre practitioner, and more as I go into my art practice, is I rely a lot on my training as a theatre person, which is, it makes sense because those are the skills that you have. So the one theatre practitioner that I've leaned on a lot, just in terms of some of the foundations of his way of working, is Keith Johnston. And I don't know if anyone knows anything about Keith Johnston, but he's basically developed a form of, or a set of exercises that help a person to unthink all the things that they thought they knew about being creative. So there are a set of exercises that you play with other actors, and they help you reach a safe place to have spontaneous, creative responses to things. And I mean, even though my work I do it solo, my art practice, I still lean on some of a lot of Keith Johnston's teachings. And one of them is to think inside the box. So he says, forget about this idea that to be creative, you have to think outside the box and you have to be original and you have to come up with these original ideas. He says, just work from the inside, work from your gut, work from what you know, work from the inside out. So rather think inside the box. And then he also says, start anywhere. Like, don't worry about where you start and if it's got meaning, how amazing is my idea. He just says, start and make it up as you go along. And then respond honestly and authentically to what you're doing and the process that you're in, what you like, what's not working. And then the big thing for me is this sense of being, he says, be average. And by that, he doesn't mean like, don't be amazing and don't excel, but he's just saying be this ordinary, everyday person, work from what you know, and don't try too hard to be clever and original and intelligent and deep. So he says that trying to do this, trying to be all these things that you're not, will actually stifle your creative process. So I've leaned a lot on him and this idea of thinking inside the box. I've got this little case study. So when I cut, I start anywhere and I cut and I cut and I cut a lot. I'll cut 2 or 3 at the same time, or I'll start with one and then move on to another one. And then I like to put them up and play with them. So I'll swap out backgrounds, I'll put in other things, put new foregrounds in, cut out different shapes, and just see what happens in that process. Because in that process, something happens, which is incredible. It's like it just happens. The idea starts to formulate right in front of your eyes. So this is one piece and I wanted to show you the start, where I started in the rehearsal room on the left. I wanted to make a piece out of an acacia tree, and I cut this acacia tree out, and it just looked, it was not working. And I can't show all the process because it's just going to take too long to get those slides up. But I ended up with the image on the right. So by adding layers and cutting and recutting and playing with the process of paper, which I find quite liberating. So layering the paper for me is quite a nice way of making my work, because if I don't like something, I don't need to repaint over it or try to figure out how it might look or redraw it. I just add another piece of paper in, cut a bit, add another background in, grab that, put that on, see where things are going, and it becomes quite a nice, fast, engaged way of working.
Well, it's fast, but it's also very slow. So, I mean, like Mohini's work and how long it takes. So Mohini's work is very additive, right? Like you keep adding on petals and flowers to create the process. Yours is actually a combination of both. So you're taking away from each of the layers of paper, but you're adding more and more pieces of paper into each work. Although I think for the most part, you sort of stop at 3 or 4. Typically, but it adds this great level of depth, which I think it's a bit hard for our online participants to see this, but there is a great kind of depth and shadow that comes about in Lisa's work because of all the layering and what the light just naturally does anyway. So, I mean, this process of cutting is very time consuming.
Yes, it is.
It's not a quick thing. I mean, putting it together maybe feels quick relatively.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the cutting takes time. You're right. And a lot of the things I cut, I never use.
Yeah.
But they go in a box and then they come out and they make their way into another artwork.
Yeah.
So the cutting is never a waste of time.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think any act, I mean, I'm sure Mohini, you feel this way. I don't think any act of creation is a waste of time, even if it never makes it onto the artwork.
I think, it's important for it to be a continuous process, and you always, like, sometimes you make bad work and sometimes you make work that's really amazing. And it's just part and parcel of the process.
Well, you're not machines, right? So, like I have this argument with people quite a lot that there are, an artist can make bad work. And that is because they're experimenting and going somewhere in order to get to the greatness. It takes a minute. And we don't want you to be machines. Machines produce the same thing perfectly, like your CNC cutter. It's amazing. It does its job. But, it can only ever do that one thing. And outside of that, it's never going to make a cup of coffee. Like it's stuck in its little realm. You know what I mean? So we don't want you to be that. We want you to be able to play as audience members.
100%. I agree.
So scrolling down, so this is a new body of work that I've been working on. I call it the well-trodden path, because it came about through 2 walks that I did. One I did in the Kruger Park in winter last year, and the other one I did in the Golden Gate. Is it the Golden Gate National Park in January of this year? 2 very different seasons. One was winter, one was the summer. And just the sense of this path being this path that you take through life from the moment that you're born, and then you walk this path and then you die. So you emerge from your divine source, and then you walk a path and then you return back to your divine source. So and it's well trodden because everyone has to do it. You can't not get, you don't get to not do this path. You've got to walk your path. So the process of me making my artworks is almost like me stopping on that path. So me going, okay, hold on. I want to stop here. I want to take a breath. I want to look at things around me. I want to see the detail and the beauty and the magic of the little things. Things are going too fast. I'm going to try and slow down on my well-trodden path before I die and look at the beauty and the magic of the world around me. So these are 2 photographs that I took on those 2 walks. The Kruger one was very much, because there are wild animals around, we walked in single file, we weren't allowed to talk or make a noise. And this monotonous sound of walking through the grass, things were very dry. The grass was brittle, the sun was really intense, the colors were intense. You can see the hot yellows there and the creams and the textured browns on the left. And then the walk on the right was done in the height of summer, and obviously there were no wild animals around, so we were a lot more jubilant as a walking team. We spoke a lot. There was a lot of water. The wildflowers were all out. The green, oh my gosh, the abundance of green. It was almost like overwhelming. So vistas were overwhelming and abundant, and there was this deep, deep sense of being very much cared for by the planet, even though we are such a ruthless species that just consumes and consumes and consumes. So the conceptually, these are the things that I'm kind of looking at through making this work about the well-trodden path. And for me, the felt grass is a very exciting visual metaphor. So the grass is very dense and layered, and it hides. So this idea of hiding and seeking and not being able to see, looking very closely. And when you do look closely, the amazing things that you can find. This sense of memory, so loss of and selective or nostalgic memory. So forgetting to remember, trying to place it, what's going on as I get older myself as a woman. The sense of my nostalgic memories are almost like I've made them up in a way, because you layer and layer and layer them so much. And then the memories curl around each other. So the sense of memory loss, or becoming harebrained. Did I remember that properly? When did that happen? So I'm making these artworks about like trying to remember things. And then obviously seasons, so agedness, getting older. There's a wonderful word that I came across while I was just looking at how do you explain agedness. And the one word here is senescence. So it talks about your cells in your body, they age and they die and they become brittle. And I thought, wow, that's such a beautiful word to talk about aging, because it's the opposite of essence, which is the start of something, the source, your divine source. And then senescence is this moving towards death, back towards your divine source along this well-trodden path. And then also things around my time on the planet. Our time as a species on the planet is limited. So narratives around death, returning to the divine, extinction as a species, which I think we are definitely on that path. So these are all things that I'm exploring in this new body of work. I'm very excited about it.
Good.
So these are the first two works that I made, and I made them as part of the Boba course at the end of last year. And they're called Forgetting to Remember and Remembering to Forget. And they were made as these twins. They were originally one long piece, which wasn't working. And then when I cut the piece up and added a frame, the circle as a frame to really frame what you see or hone someone's attention, then suddenly things started to happen. So what I really like about the story of these two is that the original buyer bought one piece, and then she came back to me 6 months later and she bought the sister, the other piece. So they're actually together as a team on the same wall, which is really nice because they were made together as a pair. Oh, this one we're not going to talk about. And then this is a piece I made early on this year. It started off as a plain white and yellow kind of brittle piece, and it just wasn't working.
So the one on the left?
The one on the left, yeah. I did frame it. I went to all of that. It was all constructed and put together, and it just wasn't working. And sometimes there are these pieces, they talk to you. They just don't keep quiet. They're like in your head as you walk into your studio, and they're there going, "Guy, I'm not finished here. Come on, finish me." And so I took the whole piece apart and added color, and yeah, and now it's quiet. Thank goodness. No more like moaning at me from the corner of the studio. I did have another piece in here, but it's not there. But anyway, just practical stuff. So I'm working on Fabriano paper, so good watercolor cotton paper. It cuts really nicely. I'm really enjoying it. How it works, how it accepts the glue. A lot of the papers show a glue mark, and then you have to start all over again. So I add color. Someone at Contrafair thought that I cut things out of magazines and put it. So I said, no, it's all hand colored.
And colored, yes.
I use watercolor pencil and colored cardboard. And then my glue is a white PVA wood glue. It's pH neutral. and acid-free. Although the jury's out on that, I've had discussions with, anyway. But yeah, and then I have a little care instruction that goes on the back of all my artwork. So there is a little bit of a guarantee that says if anything goes wrong with the artwork, if some piece falls off or whatever, which it hasn't done, nothing like that has happened yet, but please bring it back to me and I will refurbish it. Yeah, and then just to say, like, paper warps with the amount of moisture in the air. So in some of the paper parts of the little artwork will tend to curl. In winter, they go flat again. So that's completely normal. It's just paper has a life, and the cotton paper is a natural fiber. And then all my works come framed. So Ntombi and I at August House, she's the resident framer in August House. We've worked closely to develop a framing system that works well with these layered works.
Because that's complicated.
Yes.
Getting them to sit right in the frame.
Within the frame. And also Ntombi can't put any pressure on them when she puts them onto the backing board. So I build from a backing board and then I give the whole thing to Ntombi and then she frames around it. But you know, we down to the millimeter, like how close does the artwork come to the edge of the frame. So that's been quite fun, is actually working with Ntombi and figuring all of that out.
Getting the process right.
Yeah. And she's very knowledgeable. And very helpful with how that happens. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what I'm doing.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I think what's quite interesting about both of your work, and it's funny because I think botanicals on some level get a bit of a bad rap because they are stuck in a particular period in time. My mother and I have this argument because she loves botanical artwork, and there are specialists who paint, and it's actually very hard to do proper botanical, you know, biologically accurate plant pictures with all of the bits and bobs labeled. And yet I think there's so much in the essence of, you know, the divine energy female that results from, you know, nature. I also think that you said this earlier, like we overlook things so obviously. So I read this really interesting book by David Saleh called Ways to See. And one of the things he talks about is how great artists have the ability to take something quite ordinary and make it not ordinary anymore and make us see it. And one of the works he references is a very famous American artist whose name I can't remember, who took a vacuum cleaner, a very old-fashioned Hoover, and sprayed it in kind of Lumo colors and put it onto a plinth with a glass case over the top. And everyone kind of, you know, everyone's in outrage because it's just a Hoover. But what he's trying to do is show us something that's very obvious and unseen in a lot of ways. Usha Sejaram does this with her work. She does a lot of work creating abstract figures, often using pigs. I'm thinking specifically about her pig range, which talks to women's work in the house, and kind of how laborious and monotonous and ongoing that work is. And one of the ways she reflects that is through the materiality, which is also an interesting thing, because I think every artist has their material and the material becomes a language. I mean, Mohini, you stumbled onto your clay, but it's become the way you express yourself with it has become your own language in a funny way. And I'm sure as you're growing with it, you're learning new words.
Yeah, so many. So yeah, the vocabulary keeps expanding, and just new ways of engaging with the material and what it means as well.
Because it does different things, you know, to your point about paper. There's certain things that paper can do that, you know, polymer clay won't do, or the polymer clay can't do the light, the lamp we were talking about earlier. You know, the material won't allow it to do that. You know, there are restrictions on the language and what you're able to kind of create with it. I think we're kind of drawing towards the end of our panel discussion from a presentation point of view, but I would love to hear whether any of our audience members have any questions for our artists, any thoughts that you may want to share, you're welcome to put something into the chat box, and we can read it out there. If not, I'm going to wrap up with one or two kind of last thoughts. So I'll keep talking, and please put your questions in the chat box, and we can take it from there. I wanted to hear from both of you. I mean, obviously, Sasol's a little bit away in terms of the final kind of announcement, but what kind of exciting projects outside of Sasol are you planning towards or working on? I know you're working on a new body of work. Do you have plans for it yet? Mohini, are you working towards something? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
At the moment, I'm just playing, so just experimenting with a lot of different techniques, different materials, applications, patterns, colors. So having a bit of fun and seeing where that will take me in the next couple of months. But yeah, always continuing to work.
What do you have coming up? What are you working on?
I'm working on quite a big piece.
You look nervous.
Yeah, the papers really has a real life and bending and buckling, but I'm hoping that as I cut into it, it will flatten. So yeah, that's my one. Like and folded leaves and things. So
Yes.
yeah,
It's very in depth.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So Julie's got two questions. Let me ask you, Mohini, I think the first one is for you. Are you able to see the question in the Q&A section? Otherwise, I can read it.
Let me have a squiz. Oh, Villica sculptures. Okay. What exactly do the Villica sculptures represent? I asked because of what Sarah said about the interpretation. You answered my question with regards to the femininity. I guess the anatomy of the woman's body. I like the colors as well because they have a strong aura towards that. Yeah, so the Villicas represent just that. Feminine energy is definitely what they embody at their core. They're also very symbolic of my heritage. So the Villica, the form of the lamp, a lamp holds fire, so Agni in Sanskrit, and fire is considered to be the beginning and the end of all things. It's the creation and the destruction of life. So that would be another important symbolism. Yeah, so.
Thank you. The other question is for both of you, and maybe Lisa, you can start. I see that you both have a deep relationship with nature. How do you guys immerse yourselves in those spaces, and how does the process take place on any given day?
So I like to do we go out, the family and I, we call them our pilgrimages. So it is like going to church, and we just go walking. So we'll do a national park or whatever, and we'll walk for 3 or 4 days, and really immerse ourselves, just get out of the city and out of our computers and back into our heads and into our bodies and into conversation. But I'm also a gardener. I'm an amateur gardener, so I love I find that gardening is a great way to just have a relationship with nature, have conversations in your head, and feel better. I always feel so much better when I come in from the garden. So those are the two ways that I.
Mohini, for you?
Similar to Sarah, it's about spending time in nature and connecting. I think for me, it's centered a lot around the home. So my family home, we've got a garden, and my mom and my aunt and my granny love to tinker, and we have like one of our uncles is a horticulturist who like cultivates roses, and my brother is a bonsai artist, and so we spend a lot of time engaging with flowers and nature and plants, and just just caring for them and engaging with them and spending time in the garden. I mean, we love to be outside, and I often go for walks with my gran, and we'll look at the flowers, or she'll point out one that she particularly likes, or it's, sometimes we adventure out and we'll go to like Ludwig's Roses for the day, have some tea and and just look at the flowers for fun. Oftentimes it's just me cruising in the nursery aisle at Boulder's Warehouse as well. So it's different ways. I feel like nature often finds me.
Yeah. I guess if it's something that's important to you, you also seek it out in whatever way, whether that's Builder's Warehouse or a walk somewhere. Yeah. Next, Mohini, when I look at your flowers, I feel uncomfortable in a good way. Do the joyful memories ever make you feel uncomfortable? What an interesting question.
That's a very interesting question. I think they should make you uncomfortable. It's not all the artworks and the flowers are not always about joy. I mean, as with flowers, we don't always offer them in happy times or in celebration. Sometimes they're in mourning or in sadness, or they carry different memories. Not everybody has happy memories, and I think for me that is the same. I think the level of intricacy that can become quite uncomfortable is an important feature, and speaks true to my experiences and some of the memories that are associated with the flowers. So I think that they should make you feel uncomfortable sometimes. I think also sometimes we're also as humans uncomfortable with our own vulnerability and fragility, and our mortality, and so that also I think is something that is present within the work, and a very important part of my practice too.
It's such an interesting question though, because I am not a big believer in all artwork should be beautiful, or that all artwork should be unconfrontational or pretty, or I think there are, for me, certainly artwork is about making me feel certain ways, and I want to run the full gambit of what that means as a human being. So some of the pieces I have in my collection are rude, some of them are inappropriate, some of them question my whiteness, some of them are just downright strange, but that all makes me feel particular ways about myself on particular days, and as a kind of amateur collector, I enjoy that. It's one of the things I enjoy about my looking at certain artworks. If you have any questions for us about Africa Collect or the artists, or if you would like to know how to get hold of them, please look at the catalog that we put into the chat box. All the information is in there. Both Mohini and Lisa are on social media, so you're more than welcome to follow them. I'm going to very quickly put their handles into the chat as well. And we greatly appreciate your time, and we hope that we will see you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Tabo. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
It's
you,
really
everyone.
great talking to you guys.
Everyone.
Thanks for coming, everyone.